Hey, what's up YouTube and Triple T members? Jeremy Barber here, owner of Trade in the Trend chat room on Discord. The link is in the description. Free 7-day trial. Come check us out. We only had one play from yesterday, and that was ticker symbol F. It's a slower moving stock, a steady stock, and that's exactly what we wanted to be in going into today. Market's been very shaky, so if we were seeing a lot of red today, we would have wanted something moving slow, and we would have been able to get out of pretty easily for a minimal loss. But that's not what happened. It trended up pretty much all day long. Went over 6% at one point, so a pretty solid play when we didn't know what we were really going to get from the markets. Again, the link is in the description. Come check us out. So today I wanted to discuss gap plays. Gaps are created from movement in after hour or pre-market, and that's not actually recorded on the chart. The daily candlestick only records the regular market open to regular market close. So any movement in after hour or pre-market creates gaps in your chart. So I put together this little video to go over a couple of charts that had gaps in them. Today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of charts that have gaps on them. Gaps are created, these daily candlesticks right here, that is the regular hours open to regular hours close. So anything that happens in after hours or in pre-market before the next day is going to create a gap on your chart. You can see that we have this small gap right here created from a gap up on April 15th. So we had a small gap up right there, and I've heard this saying since I started trading that gaps always get filled. Well, that's not necessarily true. You do often see gaps get filled, especially once they break into the gap. Once they break, if they're coming from the bottom, once they break this bottom trend line, or if they're falling from the top, once they get in between these, they oftentimes do go ahead and fill the gap. So, like I said, we had this small gap created right here where we gapped up. You can see huge run way up to $17. Slowly gave it back, came down, bounced right off of this trend line, went up a little bit, and then actually did break through and filled that gap. It put a candlestick within that gap. Now it closed right down on this trend line right here and actually gapped down to here and created another gap. You can see a little bit larger gap right here. And then the price action stayed below this. It poked above once right there. But again, remember, a resistance isn't broken until you actually close a candlestick over it. So it's going along. Finally closes over right here on this candlestick. Finally closed over on this candlestick right there. And from there, it proceeded to fill the gap. And you can see that it actually still, this top line from this gap that was created, we hit right up against it. We ran up, hit right up against it again, and actually reversed down. So I used to, like I said, I used to play these quite often. Once it gets about more than 25% into the gap, your risk reward isn't, that gives you a 3-to-1 at that point. Once you go much further past that, it's not really a good play. So you have to catch it pretty early. And it doesn't always fill on it. Sometimes you will see it fill on the next day, like this one. You know, it went straight through all in one day, but this broke over and just slowly crept up until that gap was filled. We're going to take a look at one other chart. Okay, so typically whenever I'm drawing my support and resistance lines on a gap, I'm using the body of the candlestick. Well, this one was kind of weird because you had this really long top and bottom wick on it. So I put this first initial line on the body of this candlestick right here. And then I went ahead and threw another line on top of this wick right here. So we had something caused it to gap down right here, created a gap, about a $3 gap right here. We went down. We came back up and tried to break into the gap, what I would have called the gap. I don't count the wicks. We tried to break into the gap, couldn't do it, was rejected. This was actually formed a little cup and handle right here. You can see round and then the little handle, and then we broke through into the gap. Now once we broke into the gap, we ran into this resistance from that wick up there and actually went through a little consolidation right here. Pull back, bounce up, pull back, and then we broke through the resistance from that wick right here. And then you can see how this went up right to this, what is now a resistance line. We filled the gap perfectly, and then it actually reversed back down. Now it did again find support on this line right here and is now going, or it's had 2 days where it's moved back up. But the important part of this chart was the gap and how you have to respect these gaps, and they often do get filled, and it will be a point of resistance when you're trying to fill it to the top side. So who knows what happens from here. Looks like you might actually have this little channel. It could bounce back and forth in this channel for who knows how long. But this chart pattern, if you had entered as it breaks over this resistance, you would have had about a $2 profit right there. Say you'd entered 50 cents on after it broke through, and that would have left about a $2.50 profit. And it happened over a span of 4 or 5 days. Now some of them, like I said, could be 1 day. Some of them you see very, very large gaps. It could take months to fill that gap. And remember, it doesn't necessarily always have to, but you do often see it once it breaks into the gap. So that will wrap up our lesson on gap plays. So that was the lesson on gap plays. Again, this market, as of the last 6 months or so, there haven't been too many gap plays, but it will be something that comes back around. It will come in handy whenever you start seeing those gaps and you know how to play them. So like I said, we did only have one play from yesterday. I'll show that result from that play, and then I will also show the plays that we are holding overnight tonight. Thanks for joining. Good luck and stay green.